Now, I just want to mention about a topic. It's not a really important topic. It's not in the headlines. It's not a major topic of auction houses, collectors, and museums. It's a very minor topic that has to do with being able to recognize the differences between Manjushri and Maitreya. And we only have a few examples of this where it comes up where there's a question as to a sculpture and whether or not it's a Manjushri or whether or not it's a Maitreya. And this question came up, I don't know, I think it's several years ago, maybe 15 years ago. Goodness, I think it was back around 2004, really. When it came up, when the Rubin Museum acquired a Manjushri, or acquired a sculpture, and the sculpture is Har number 65255. And the question was, is it a Maitreya or is it a Manjushri? And at the time, there were some curators who were leaning towards Maitreya, but I've always leaned the other way. I've always leaned more towards Manjushri. Now, I'm going to give you my reasons for that. Now, again, we only have 4 examples on the Har website, and only 3 of them are in question. Now, also, these 3 examples are Manjushri, and 1 example is Maitreya. Now, the 3 examples of Manjushri here are ones that are in question. Now, I'm sure there's going to be other sculptures that are in question. So here's the issue. When it comes to Manjushri and Maitreya, they both have peaceful deity appearance. They're like bodhisattvas. Bodhisattva and peaceful deity appearance is identical. It's the same thing in art. It's not the same thing in religious context. It's not the same thing in religious studies. I'm saying art. It's the same thing in art. A bodhisattva appearance and a peaceful deity appearance is identical. Doesn't matter male or female. We're not talking about the abstract meaning of what a bodhisattva is and what a peaceful deity is who's not a bodhisattva. We're not talking about that. Okay, so for Maitreya and Manjushri, they look essentially the same. They're males, they have 1 face, 2 arms, and they have this peaceful deity appearance and can be confused easily with being bodhisattvas as well. So the appearance is the same. Now the gestures are not. They share the gestures. So when I say the gestures are not the same, one sculpture to another doesn't have to have the same gestures. Often what we find is the teaching gesture is quite common. Then we have posture. Now they can both be in a relaxed posture, they can be in vajra posture, or they can have one leg hanging forward, stretched forward. Right or left, doesn't matter. Okay, then we look at the attributes for Manjushri and Maitreya and the differences. Manjushri has the sword, the book, as the main attributes, or just the book. And then Maitreya has usually the water flask, a wheel, and then a stupa. Now the stupa can be on a lotus on the left or right side, or it can be on the crown of the head. So Maitreya, typically, if he has something on the crown of the head, it's a stupa. Okay, now, Manjushri has 2 main categories of form. He has a Sutrayana, non-iconic form, and then he has Tantra, Vajrayana, iconic form. And very often in the Vajrayana form, Manjushri has a half vajra on the crown of the head. Now, also, where do we find this? Do we find this with Chinese art, Tibetan art? What kind of art? Well, actually, no. We find it with sculpture that's primarily Nepalese. So now what we have is we have 3 previously unidentified forms of a male 1 face 2 armed figure, and each of them has a half vajra on the crown of the head. Then I have actually added very clearly identified as Maitreya, where he has the hands in the teaching gesture. He has a water flask, and he also has a half vajra on the crown of the head. So this is unusual for Maitreya, but it is something that it will occasionally happen with Nepalese sculpture. It rarely, if not ever, with Chinese and Tibetan and Mongolian sculpture. It's a Nepalese kind of convention to put a half vajra on the crown of the head, but it's more often than not, it's Manjushri, not Maitreya, because the vajra is also associated with Vajrayana Buddhism, and Maitreya is primarily associated with Sutrayana Buddhism. So it's actually more inappropriate to have a half vajra on the crown of Maitreya. So we have 3 examples of figures with the half vajra, and then we have one very clear example of Maitreya also with a half vajra. But the Maitreya here that's depicted is the only one that we have found on the Himalayan art resources among hundreds of Maitreya sculpture in peaceful appearance. So we'll leave it there. You can press like, you can subscribe, you can join HAR on Patreon, and you can also make a donation on the Himalayan Art Resources homepage.